Hello. Before we get into this week's episode, I just wanted to say a very quick thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this podcast, and thank you for rating and subscribing to this podcast. It really helps me to continue to do something that is really meaningful to me. And if you haven't yet subscribed or rated the podcast, if you could take a quick 30 seconds to do that, it doesn't cost you a thing. And it really means I can continue to bring you incredible stories, expert advice, and hopefully some laughs as well. So once again, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Welcome back to the Jackie Tan podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Tan, and today I welcome back my very good friend, Matt Jones, to the podcast. I have had him on the show a few times now, and every time our conversations really deep dive into the topic of that episode. And this episode does exactly that. And of course, so much more, because we do tend to go on tangents, but they're really, should I say tangents, rabbit holes? It's just everything that we talk about is so incredibly nuanced, and there's no one right answer or one size fits all. And so we really try to explore every facet of what we're talking about. And Matt is really, really good at doing that. If you remember back in December last year, I did a 12 days of Quotemas, and Matt sent through one of his favorite quotes, and I loved it, and I wanted to know why he liked it so much. And he said, well, why don't I just tell you in person? And I'm like, great. So it's so good to have him here today. Let me tell you about Matt's accomplishments first. I think it's important to get a background of the people that I talk to today. And Matt is incredibly accomplished. And even as I say that, it doesn't feel like it gives a full picture to what Matt has done and what he's achieved and what he's helped others achieve. But here we go. Matt is the head coach and founder of ISO Health, one of Australia's leading self-defense and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies. He's been hired by some of Australia's most elite organisations, including law enforcement agencies in various jurisdictions, as well as some of the nation's top professional sports teams in the NBL and AFL. He's served as an S&C coach for the last 20 years to numerous elite athletes, including Olympians, professional athletes, elite amateurs, combat athletes, and 5 world champions from 3 different sports. And although he helps high-performance athletes and occupational athletes, his main focus is strength and conditioning in spine training and rehab. This interest came from his recovery journey after breaking his neck in a freak sporting accident. And if you want to hear this story of how he broke his neck and made a full recovery, you can listen to that episode in season 1, episode 8. And in today's episode, we have a conversation about his favorite quote, and that is, "Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer," which is a really great quote. We dive deep into it. We explore social media hate and trolls. We delve into beliefs and values, and we do tackle some uncomfortable and potentially confronting questions about what is right and wrong and morally just. And I do feel like we really examine some complex scenarios that really challenge, or at least I know it challenged our understanding of ethics and morality in the moment. It was such a great conversation. And like I said, it's one that we dive deep into, and Matt is a really great person to have these conversations with, because he's really open to exploring, like I said, all facets of a certain topic. So without further ado, let's dive straight in with this episode with Matt Jones. Matt Jones? Is that a good way of starting?
Sure. Oh my God, you're hilarious.
Welcome back. I was going to say to the show, but when is it the 3 times you've been on the show,
Yeah.
it's been the Bodies But Better podcast, but now it's the Jackie Tan podcast. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Last year I did a 12 days of quoteness and you sent yours through, which I really loved. And I said to you, what's your reason behind, tell me why you like this? And you're like, I can, but how about we just do this face to face? I'm like,
yeah.
Perfect.
Much easier.
Let's do it. So tell me, I'll let you tell what the quote is, and then I'd really love to know why you like it so much.
Sure.
Off you go.
All right.
And go.
Yeah, the quote is, your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer.
I love that so much.
Me too. And it's kind of funny because it's from Rick Sanchez in the show Rick and Morty, which I've seen all of about probably 1.5 episodes of. And
I didn't even know what that was, by the way.
Yeah. It was super weird. Like I don't know, one of my mates was saying how he really likes the show or something. I clicked on one episode. I'm like, and another half an episode. Like, hey, I mean, I'm sure it's great. Just that didn't grab me. So I've seen all of that much. But the cool thing was within that 1.5 episode of watch time, that popped up.
That was literally the one you saw.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is unreal. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because since we spoke, that was goodness knows how long ago, when we're talking about it. Yeah, I've seen it actually starting to pop up a little bit. So it seems to be something that's gaining traction because given how rarely I am on social media, whether it's, I don't get on there much to look and I'm even on there less to post. So for me to see it popping up in the little bit of time I spend on there, it must be sort of getting a fair bit of momentum now, which is kind of cool.
The memes that have come from that are quite hilarious as well. But why do you like it? Because I've dived deeper into it and I like to try and get almost like a for and against for something. And I'd love to hear why you like it and does that change the way you think, the way you interact with people? Tell me why you like it so much.
It's kind of funny because it was a much nicer and more articulate expression of something I've thought for goodness knows how long. And so what okay, this sounds we're getting real dark real quick.
What's new?
You're the first person to ever tell me I was intense. Hey, and I'm like, I remember you being gobsmacked that I was surprised by that. Yeah. So for a long time, right, like I always worked on the idea there's no value in having everyone like you. And in fact, there's actually value in having a whole bunch of people hate you because not everyone's thinking the same. And some people are good, some people are bad. And, people can get into discussions about what that even means to folks. But the reality is, if your idea of bad is this and your idea of good is this, well, by default, then there's got to be a whole bunch of people who don't like you. That's just going to be the way it is. And it doesn't even necessarily mean they're bad people. You're just not their cup of tea, and that's fine. And so, in my head, I'd always kind of thought, like, if everyone likes you, then that's actually a bad thing. And you're definitely not, you're very unlikely to be committed to any particular idea. Rick said it way better. So, your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer. Well, if people are booing you and what you're about and you happen to be, following your values or your dream, then you have a look and also notice that the stuff they cheer for is the antithesis of your dream and what you're about. Well, that's cool. That's actually good. Everything is as it should be. And again, it doesn't, in some cases, obviously it will mean, there's a very clear good and bad. But there's also lots of times where it's just, far less dark than that. And it's, I don't know, if you decide tomorrow you want to become Australia's greatest country singing export out of Adelaide, and then people are hating on that because it turns out they're into death metal, that's okay. Because if they're cheering for, by the way, nothing against death metal, but the point is, I was trying to think of something that's very much the opposite, right? Because it's pretty clear cut. If they really love death metal, they're not going to like your country music, and that's okay. So yeah, that's really kind of the crux of it, because I think like otherwise you're trying to serve two masters all the time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I don't think that's really going to sort of get folks too far. Certainly, well, I mean, that's my limitation, shouldn't be anyone else's, but it definitely wouldn't get me too far. Like I need to really keep things super, super clear cut and really simple.
Exactly.
So yeah, that all works for me.
Because then it also turns into people pleasing. You start to potentially lose yourself and move further from your dreams if you are then taking on board everyone's, whether it's criticism, feedback, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you don't want your mind to be so open that your brains fall out your head. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it. It kind of helps keep a narrow focus, and it also helps you, I think, be again, like moving away from the the very dark side of how that could be expressed or play out. It also just helps you be, I think, more understanding of people too, because like if someone's not digging what you're about, when you understand that what they're about is completely different, I think it's much easier to go, okay, cool, you do you, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Great. And it doesn't even mean that they're consciously against, especially these days, there's so much information on so many things. And, I've always sort of really felt the internet's amazing because it gives everyone a voice, and the internet is terrible because it gives everyone a voice. And so there's so much stuff to sift through that there'll also be lots of things we don't understand. And there could be times where we really, have a massive dislike for a certain thing, or even, even hate something. And we may not even understand what that thing is. And if we knew a little bit more, or if we could kind of sift through the muddy waters, we might be like, oh man, no, that actually, yeah, I dig that. So yeah, that's kind of the crux of it. So basically in a nutshell, you got your values, and if you're following them and other people's values are very different, they're going to be cheering for different stuff to you. Ergo, some of them, if they happen to be people that like to express their negativity, they're going to be booing you, and that's okay.
What about when it's someone that you're either friends with, that you respect and value, and they're coming at you not agreeing with either what you said, what you're doing? How do you then take that on board? Because, I mean, you could say, if you go with this quote, are you shutting down the opportunity to have an open conversation about something? Are you, staying true to you and what you believe in? Like, how do you measure that and approach that?
Yeah, cool. Great question. I actually think that's way easier than it seems on the surface, because the way I interpret it is, to me, the idea, your boos mean nothing. When I hear that, my head immediately thinks boo as a pretty negative, less than useful expression of disapproval. In which case, what do you do with that anyway? Nothing. So to me, that's wildly different to having a genuine conversation about the fact that two of you have a completely different idea. Do you know what I mean? I think that's super good. I think like having genuine conversations, good faith conversations, is awesome. And if you have those differences of opinion, you might even find that neither of you, after that conversation, feel the same way. You might have ended up both moving a bit in your position, or having new ideas that you sort of work on together. So yeah, that I'm massively for. Yeah, as I say, when I hear boo, I think of just kind of that negativity that is bringing nothing productive with it.
Yeah, not constructive.
Correct. Yeah, not to be confused with constructive disagreement.
Yeah, awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And it was one of those things where I guess it all comes down to context of what's being said. How is the thing that's being said? So yeah, I guess it comes down to the person who is providing that feedback, depending on who they are, their relationship to you is going to determine how they communicate their thoughts on what's being said, what's being done.
Yeah, and like I'd even sort of think, if I may add to that, I'm thinking even less so who they are and who, like, as a person or who they are to me, and more so just how they're communicating to begin with, because I think, like, even if we're strangers to each other, it's a really good place to start from a position of being respectful and good faith.
Absolutely.
And so I think, like, that's something we want to try and bring to combos. And I mean, I don't claim to be perfect at that. Definitely trying. But yeah, I think if we sort of start the combos from that perspective, it ultimately doesn't matter where, like, what am I trying to say? Not so much it doesn't matter, because obviously if you're really close to someone and they really hate something you're doing, it could emotionally bother you more. But what I mean to say is, their intent, a person's intent, it should be good from the start if it's going to be a good faith discussion, whether you know each other well, whether it's someone you're related to or anything else, So I think, like, that's sort of the key for me is, whether it is starting from a genuine place of trying to find the truth, or whether it's a case of just trying to score points, have gotcha moments, or make someone feel like crap because that's, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the problem with social media, especially in this day and age. I know you said you're not on there much,
No.
But there's a lot of really high profile people that I follow, scientists, nutritionists, doctors, and I know everyone's got an agenda or something to push, and some would say that, they're for the people. And I mean, actually they all say that, but sometimes it's not very clear in those intentions.
That's a good topic in itself.
But instead of having, conversations about things that are, they disagree upon, they use their space to basically just, I don't know how you bash on what they're saying, put their videos up, and literally go to town on what they're saying, on why it's so bad. And it's
kind of like just sledging other people and stuff, rather than elevating their own argument.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Lane Norton.
Oh yeah, nutrition guy.
And he's really obviously exceptional with reading the science and the papers, and so he can break that down, and does call out a lot of people, especially when people are quoting papers incorrectly, and that's fair. But it's just, there's so much aggression around that. Could these conversations be held in a more respectful manner? Like, I don't know. I don't know your thoughts around that, but that came to me when you said, if the intention is you really want to be learning and educating yourself around what someone's saying, you want to be respectful, do you not? So
yeah, I mean, I think it's a good place to start, and I understand people are going to run hot on certain things, and there could definitely be times, I'm sure I've been guilty of it in the past, where if you feel that what you're discussing is really important to people, and you feel that the truth is over here, and on the other hand, if and at the same time you feel that there's people putting, like, wildly just massively incorrect information out there, and it's a really important topic, I can see where people could easily feel justified in being like, well, the venom and heat they bring to their delivery is totally justified, because it's almost like a safety thing, right? Like if it's, say, if there's a nutritional strategy that could be really dangerous for people, that's an easy place to start. And if there's zero doubt that it's really dangerous, there's going to be people who see it as a public service to get out there and just be brutal in their delivery because they feel like it's super, super important and all that sort of stuff. And so I can appreciate where that can come from. I don't know whether or not that gets the message across in the most effective way to the greatest number of people, I guess, is another thing. And I'm not a good one to even comment on that because I'm never interested in reaching many people, right? Like I think probably I was trying to find a photo to send to a mate the other day that he asked for. I'll just look on my Instagram, right? I don't have to scroll very far to get like 3 years back. Oh,
there it is.
yeah. So yeah, I'm not a great one to ask because I've never really thought too much about trying to reach more people with stuff. Which I've had a couple of people say to me, it's almost like that's a bad thing, right? Because they're like, if you really believe in what you do, and if you believe that what you're doing is, like, say, my spine care stuff, for example, if you believe that is effective, and there's other stuff that is either neutral or even worse, there's absolutely, I mean, I've had so many people sent to me where the therapies they'd been following had made things far, far worse. So folks have said to me, well, if those things are true, then you owe it to people to put that stuff out more. And instead of being the dude who, never jumps on social media, it's almost unethical not to, if you can educate people and help prevent some people from getting messed up worse and help other people, and that kind of stuff. So I appreciate where people are coming from. And I also get, though, like, as I say, for me, it's just not something that interests me. And I think maybe too, like, there's probably also a possibility. Some people, actually, no, I heard a scientist say this recently, so there's definitely more than a possibility. He had to re-upload a critique video on some physiology stuff, and he when he did the re-upload, he basically said, the old version got way more clicks because he was like flying off the handle about something. But something prompted him to pull that down and put up a much more measured critique of this particular physiological theory. And he said, the downside is no one's really interested in that one. So, I was sort of drifting on topics here, apologies. But I think that also sadly is a bit of a, it's a bit of a tell as to what a lot of the mentality is out there. Because if people being ragey when they share their opinion or being nasty or pointed
gets the views,
if it gets the views, that says a lot about what people are wanting to take in as well, right? And I mean, one of the world's more well-known strength coaches, Charles Polk, I heard him once say that, like, as far as what goes on within our mind and our body, it's what we take in, and it's not just eating, it's also, what we're reading, what we're watching, that kind of stuff. And it's sort of scary when you think about how all that fits together. And it's it is a bit of a sad indictment as to where, like, for some of these things to be so big, if it bleeds, it leads, right? That's not a saying that comes about in media if there wasn't merit behind it. And not merit as in it being good, but
so if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So basically, carnage gets views when it comes to media. And that's been that's been sort of pervasive in mainstream media for a really long time, and in awful. Alternative media like social media, it's no less so. So so you can kind of see where, like, people can buy into negative stuff pretty quickly. So you can see where that may even lend encouragement to for people to share their views that way, rather than having like a more chilled sort of good faith combo. But as far as, like, so putting aside whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, just as far as how it comes to be, I think it's pretty easy to kind of see, because people want to be viewed.
I'm not going to put it aside. Like, is it a bad thing? Are we selling out because we're opting for sharing our views, the science, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is that you're sharing, in a way that's going to get the views, because apparently now that's what matters most?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends partly on your goal, doesn't it? Like, if you if you argue that what you're delivering has such an important message that it needs to hit as many eyeballs as possible, and what you're delivering is so righteous in its value, right? Like, you're going to save millions of people by making sure they don't drink water anymore because it turns out water's the worst thing in the world. I'm just picking something stupid, right? But you're like, well, I might have acted like a bit of a turd, but look how many lives I saved. Does that offset the person that walks around in a really pious fashion and really impacts no one? I don't know. Now that you asked the question, that's probably something I'd have to wrestle with for a while, because you can see the justifications. It's one of my friends actually was talking about how with charity stuff, it's really interesting because, and again, this is another another massive topic, and I don't have the answer on it. So, but yeah, he once said, when we see people doing charity stuff within their business, some businesses, he knows some people do not believe in that charity at all. And they have no interest in doing anything altruistic. They do it 100% for the marketing. The I don't know what you would refer to it as, kind of like the goodwill factor that gets put out into the world by pretending they care, right? So his point was, and this was a really interesting point that he made, he said if they're injecting, we'll just use money as the example because it's so simple. If they're injecting heaps and heaps of money into a cause that really does matter, is that better than the person who truly believes in the cause but contributes nothing? I'm like, whoa, especially if it's our actions that matter more than our intent, or not even just intent, but like you can think good thoughts all you want, but how much positive impact are you having if you're not actually doing anything? I don't know, man. Like it's as I say, I am far from having any sort of answer on that. Like objectively, you could argue that the super cunning CEO who believes in nothing but his own bank account, but contributes millions of dollars to something worthwhile for the marketing value within that, is actually still doing way more good without a doubt.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's a tricky one, hey. And so yeah, that's
really
sort of
tough to wrestle with. Yeah.
If we agree, if we decided or came to the conclusion that ruthless, cunning, sociopathic, I'm just trying to pick the worst kind of ideal, sure. Right? They're this, right? If we came to the conclusion that, yeah, they are actually doing tremendous good in that, and so we put aside the fact that they don't believe in the cause and they have no interest in it, and they're really leveraging other people's misfortune and other people's good work. If we say, well, then we would probably also have to think even more deeply for quite a bit longer about whether someone putting out a really kind of clickbaity, angry critique of something. You can see where the parallels there. Like the currency of the CEO is obviously the money. The currency of the say scientist critiquing another scientist, their currency is the health, quote unquote, truth that they're putting out, and and the health, the subsequent health of their listeners. So if you have an incredibly good idea and no one sees it, how much does it contribute? Yeah. So man, I don't know. I mean, I know it's not my thing, but also it makes it easier to have that. Oh no, I'm just not going to be clickbaity. Makes it easier to have that stance when you're more busy than you can handle being anyway. Yeah. Does that make sort of sense?
Yes, but on that though, you've these particular people on, let's just say, Instagram, we're talking about millions of followers. Do they really need to be?
Okay, yeah, different conversation, eh? Yeah, that's right. Well, sorry, not a different conversation. That's another aspect of it. Yeah, I don't know. So, maybe they believe in their message, not justifying it by any stretch. As I say, I'm like, it's not my thing at all. Not a fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm trying not to come across as though I'm criticizing it. I just find it really interesting because I'm going to call myself out on this because there'll be times.
Because you're always so aggressive and just running around slagging everyone off. I didn't even get inside the gate and you were like, man, yeah. You're like, these are,
But I actually take great pleasure in watching them, I guess you could say, bash on people that I don't agree with as well. And I'm like, yeah, do it. I don't like what they're doing either. Like, they're the charlatans. But then, like, when they'll do it to a professional who I really like and I've, either taken maybe a class or maybe I've taken some advice and applied it to my life and it's come good, like, for me. And I'm like, do we really need to put absolutes, especially when it comes to the human body where there's still so much unknowns?
100%.
Like, do we need it's not black and white for me. So to bash on something or someone when their intention is also really good, and who is still doing good and is still helping people and have, benefit from their work. Like, is there a point in bashing on them if the science is yet to prove anything?
Yeah, well, you could. I mean, I think I've often believed that, and I've said this to a bunch of people that were kind of students of mine and different stuff, where I've often believed that if you look hard enough, you can find a paper to support almost any position on health, fitness, strength training, whatever. Like if you look hard enough, yeah,
huge one.
You would actually probably have a harder time not finding a topic where you can find arguments to support both sides, or multiple, dodecahedron sides, whatever you want to say, So, I think, we've got to be a bit careful with it. I mean, I saw there was a doctor a while back in the US who said that a couple of other doctors should be put in jail because they advocated for the carnivore diet. And that sounds like a pretty extreme position to me, to say they should be put in jail. And especially when there are so many people that, have absolutely benefited from eating that way.
Yeah.
So there can be some pretty crazy positions. And so that's one part is, are you even right to begin with? If there's any chance you're not, how full on should you be about your delivery? I mean, there's that. And then I think probably the other thing, you kind of touched on this for a second there. You said that you're a bit more comfortable when folks are like bashing hard on a what would you call them? Like a scientist or influencer or whatever.
Influencer. The specific one that I'm thinking of has no qualifications.
Right.
Except that they've written a book and this is the story, but they've hired people to, exactly what you said, find papers to support their claims.
Yeah, which isn't a super hard thing to do, eh? But interestingly enough, I think that bias that we're all going to have to some degree, it's a bit like protests, right? Like, that protest, that's the worst. That's just terrible that those people are doing this or that. And then, oh no, that one's all right because I'm down with the cause, and so it kind of feels like to me that, like, I do my best to try and look through it in a way where, just say with a protest, right? Regardless of whether or not I believe in the cause, the way that the protesters or rioters, whatever it's going to be, but the way the protesters are going about it, would I feel the same way if I fully believe in their cause? Would I feel the same way if I absolutely loathe their cause? So, and obviously, putting aside like super insane illegal stuff, but you get my point, sort of thing. So I think, with that, when it comes to how we feel about like an influencer, if they're bashing something that we really don't like, maybe it's easier to be more accepting of that. But maybe we need to look at it through a lens of, what if they had this delivery with something I do like? What if they had it with something I don't like? How do those kind of things, how do I reconcile those things? And that'll probably give us a bit of an idea of what we honestly think is okay or not.
And I feel like this could be wrong, but I feel like it's more prevalent now.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, we've got social media, so there's more access to people and having an opinion, either which way it is. And so it's something that I do try be really aware of for myself when I'm forming an opinion of what I'm watching. It's such an interesting one.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, and it's also, I think it's, if you have a little bit of if you have a bit of knowledge in a topic, it's also pretty easy to shoot down any argument when there's no opportunity for discussion or rebuttal in your delivery. Yeah. So, when it's a monologue, when you're sort of standing there just sort of, yelling at the camera about whatever it is, it's a lot easier to sound convincing because there's not really an opportunity for discussion or for your take to be questioned, right?
So would you still say the thing that you're wanting to say based on knowing, or, that checklist of, would I still say the same thing if someone was having a conversation with me?
Would you say it if it's a debate rather than just a monologue? Yeah, that's a good question. Hey, well, I suppose it depends on how important the topic is to you, how important, you feel it would be to share that information with people, how valuable it may be to them or not. I think your intent's going to play a big part. If you're sharing the information because you truly are sharing it and it's not something you're trying to sell, if you just think, man, this is a really important idea, people need to know this. I just discovered that the world really is flat and I don't want anyone to fall off tomorrow. Whatever your thing is, if you really believe it and you feel like it's genuinely something you want to share for the benefit of other people, that I would imagine would make it easier to share the info. And, no one's going to ever agree with everything you say. I would say it's generally harder to share an opinion if it's going to be more, if there's a potential for it to be a debate. If you know that you're going to be sort of, quote unquote, sort of fact checked with every single thing you say, you're probably going to think pretty carefully about it. And that could definitely result in a bit of inaction or paralysis by analysis. If you try and do kind of the right thing of, so to speak, because a lot of people think the right thing is being evidence-based, right? And no matter what's going on anecdotally out there, no matter what's going on the coalface, talking to clinical practitioners, and I'm using this as an example. We're just talking health-related stuff, but it applies to almost every field. That's all well and good, but it's not evidence-based. And it's like, yeah, but look at what this dude's done. Look at what this dudette has done. Their stuff is working unbelievably well. The number of people who are now a lot better than they were before. Yeah, but it's not evidence-based. And so it's easy to kind of get hung up on that. And there's obviously a place for it. But that makes things murky as well, right? Because it's like, man, I think I've found a better way here. Well, I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to get shot down because I can't find 10 peer-reviewed journals to back it up. I can't cite this. I can't cite that. Yeah, man, like that could really make people clam up and not want to try. Actually, I can speak from experience with like my spine health stuff. The green light for me to be pretty adventurous with my development of my approach with that was because I was testing everything on myself. And even then I waited before I got bold enough to go sort of against the common wisdom with a lot of the approach. That didn't happen until my health was bad enough that I felt at this point I've got nothing to lose. There's always, things can always get worse, but knowing the physiology behind the injuries I had, I was like, I'm here and I know that the stuff I'm going to try, who knows, maybe it's going to make the disc-related stuff worse. I know I'm not going to break any bones doing it. I'm not going to do anything to my spinal cord. I'm already at a point where I've spent 12 months having to either stand up or lie down. I can't do anything in between. Can't get a tub of butter out of the bottom of the fridge or walk my dog. Well, let's have a crack. It was like a light, it's that thing when you got nothing to lose. And again, things can always, but yeah, realistically within the stuff we were really sure about, I could try all these things that I thought might help. What the heck? So yeah, that made it easier for me to look from, I was looking at evidence-based stuff and looking anecdotally, but yeah, coming back to, sorry, I always go on a rant, but yeah, it's hard I can definitely see where people will feel stuck. And that even, for me, that even shaped the way I was studying. Like there were pathways professionally that I deliberately avoided because I knew that put you down a certain kind of, narrow path, and I didn't want to do that. So yeah, I mean, and it's going to make you're always going to be a bit of an outcast in some aspect of your field if you go that way. So yeah, you then end up, I suppose, needing either the belief or the confidence or who knows, the arrogance, whatever, to go, I don't care, man. I just don't care. This is what I honestly think is going to be the right way to go. Then you also have to be prepared to wear the consequences of that. That might be in the fact that it limits you financially. It could be any number of things. So it depends on how much you're going to back yourself and how important the topic is, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And that's probably...
I love it when that happens.
It's one of the things that has... that I've had such not a problem with, but it has been a hard thing to... I guess, observe in especially the health space because not everything has a science paper backing it up. And every single human being is so different, and what works for one person is potentially not going to work for the next and the next and the next. And so having a really individualized approach, whether it's evidence-based or not, I think at the end of the day, if the intention is pure and good, and obviously you do your research and you've got some knowledge behind you. Obviously, I'm not condoning people with no idea to just go out. You're not
saying, hey, as long as you got good intent, doesn't matter.
Great.
Yeah.
But,
your back hurts. Cool. Jump off here and land on your head. Now you won't think about your back anymore.
I
understand what you mean.
I mean, so as long as you've got that, then like you said, you were happy to experiment for yourself, and I'm certainly happy to do that for myself. But it's such an interesting one, and we have to be so discerning with the information that we take in and what we want for ourselves. And I think also, when we're observing or taking knowledge from a particular person or professional, it's really doing our own due diligence for ourselves into the person, what they've done, who they've helped. So it's this whole, I guess, a real holistic approach to helping yourself, taking on information and taking it in as much of a, could you say, healthy way as possible.
I have some people in my life that I have tremendous trust in, and I know they're very discerning. And even if there is a topic I know nothing about, of which there are many, if one of them says to me, hey, I had a really good experience with this building material, like, we're building a house at the moment. It's like, oh yeah, that worked great for me and it worked great for this reason, I'm like, okay, well that gets it on my radar. And then, if, oh man, yeah, you need a new mechanic, or blah, blah, blah. That type of stuff, like sometimes even if you know nothing about the topic, and of course, we know reviews can be funny, right? There's all sorts of funny games on Google with reviews with, it's literally a field of, it's its own field where there's companies where they're deliberately doing fake reviews, and then a few weeks later people get an email, oh, if you have a fake review that's really negative, we can help you. Oh, really? Man, you rocked up just in the nick of time. There's that sort of stuff, and then people can pump up positive ones, all those things. So sometimes that's a great part, but it can still be difficult, right? Like we're trying to sift through, is this legit? Who's doing the review, whatever. And so sometimes, like, I think who's actually giving the recommendation can play a part.
Absolutely. And trying to circle back to your quote.
Man, yeah. I'm always going off.
What do you think are, I guess, key things that we could keep in mind if someone is commenting on whatever it is you're saying, doing, putting out in the world, and how can we manage our reaction to their reaction, making sure that it is, I guess, equal to, what's actually happening? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I feel wildly unqualified to comment on that because, as you know, I'm such a ghost on social media. Like it's super rare that I post anything. And if I do, it's normally just to congratulate someone else on something they've done.
It doesn't have to be on social media. Okay. Like you could be on a stage.
Oh, yeah.
Giving a presentation or in a boardroom, and whether the comments or the feedback, is coming from face to face or post presentation. Maybe it's a virtual presentation. On the chat bar, there's keyboard warriors, as you probably heard the term. So same sort of scenario, different settings, but
yeah, great question. Far out, man. I suppose trying to limit what we talk about to stuff that we have a reasonable depth of knowledge in is a pretty good start. I don't know if we said this earlier on when we were talking, but I've always believed the great thing about the internet, it gives everyone a voice. The bad thing about the internet gives everyone a voice. And, I mean, there's obviously some massive upsides to everyone being able to have a chance to have a voice. And there'd be so many great, amazing minds we'd miss out on without that. I guess if you don't mind the friction that's going to come with sharing your opinion, that would make things way easier. And there's definitely people who are comfortable with that. If you're trying to be, I guess, man, I don't know.
I really like that idea, if you don't mind the friction. But I got to say for myself, I do.
Yeah, well, I mean,
even though I might be putting forward something that I'm really confident about, when I'm really confident about something, it doesn't really matter what sort of comments come through, especially if it's either someone I don't know, someone who's just put forward something really scathing or rude, then I don't care so much in the sense, because, again, it comes back to the quote, your boos don't mean anything, so see what makes you cheer. But if it's something where maybe I'm not 1,000% confident in, the intention is to help.
Yeah, okay.
But I have someone says something, or I fear that someone could say something, then I'm either not going to go ahead with it, or if I do, oh God, it really gets to me.
Would it help if I'm just thinking, like, if we're not sure about something, but we feel it's a really important thing and we want to, share that, get the discussion started, etc. Is it fair to say that what we're to some extent doing is asking a question? And if that's the case, which that's what we should be doing if we're not confident, right? And if that's the case, maybe we pose it as a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Is confidence a reflection of competence, though?
I think a lot of the time it is. Yeah. I've definitely met some people who are extremely competent in what they do, but they still didn't appear that way.
Right.
Yeah. They were kind of the sort of beautiful mind style or whatever. There was this kind of like, it's like their knowledge in their field was like a superpower. But if you were judging someone's competence by the level of confidence they exude, if that was your only yardstick, you would have thought they knew nothing.
Oh, see, that's such an interesting point that you make. And I wasn't thinking it that way. I was thinking that if you are competent, then you would be confident in what you're saying. But is that what you
might be consciously,
described?
But if you've got, say, a personality trait where you're, for whatever reason, maybe, super, super timid, or, there could be any number of neurological things going on that make people doubt themselves. There could be the way that they grew up, the household they're in, no matter how much they shone in a certain area, maybe they're always, talked down to. I've definitely met some people who are like absolutely top shelf at what they do. And once they start doing it, if you stood back and just let them go, anyone with half a brain will be able to see that this person's an absolute gun.
Yeah.
But when talking about it, there's sort of a general demeanor for them of really shrinking back into the shadows more than sort of being out center stage. And so, if you were making your assessment purely on that.
To that point, that frustrates me so much, because you've got confident people who aren't so competent spouting like out there.
Absolutely.
And have a major, whether it's a following or whatever it is, and then you have the competent person who doesn't have that extroverted personality or whatever it is, and doesn't have the accolades, could you say, that the other person's getting because they don't present themselves in the same way. And by the way, not to say that introverts can't, put themselves out there or be as successful as extroverted people. That's not it at all. But sometimes, that frustrates me as well to see.
Yeah, well, I think what you said is absolutely part of life. I don't mean that in the sense of it. It doesn't mean you can't be bothered by it, but I mean it's absolutely. Just it's been the reality of things for certainly as long as I've been alive, and I'm sure it went right back to people were working out how to make the first wheel, and there was still that kind of stuff going on. So it's like presentation and salesmanship versus your level of competence in the particular field or art or craft. And those two things won't always be the same package in the same person, right?
Yeah.
And it might be, it seems like it would be way more fair if it is, but it's not.
Exactly.
Life isn't fair.
Life's
and I'm
not
not saying
fair.
that to be doing, it's really not.
It's not.
It's absolutely not. I mean, at some point there was probably someone who looked and thought, well, that dude broke his neck with all the breaks and stuff. Why is he able to walk and I'm not?
Yeah.
And that would be a completely fair question to ask. So I never kid myself and think that that I'm the sole architect of the awesome life I have. There's so many other people that play a part. There's so much luck that plays a part.
Yeah.
I mean, even, and that doesn't negate the fact that someone may have absolutely busted their butt working hard. But I would dare say if I was busting my butt working just as hard as I did in whatever I've done, that would still look really different if I was born into a country where the family history of a family being born into a certain area means you can really only work in this particular field, or there's all that sort of crazy stuff. I mean, I think for a start, like if you're born in Australia and you grew up relatively safely, like you won the lottery, man. If you're born here and your parents weren't beating the crap out of you, that's like just such a wild head start over so many people around the world. It's not funny.
Yeah. I feel like we could forever talk and go on 15 million tangents.
Never happens.
So what I'm thinking is, unless you've got anything else you want to say around that, I would actually want to throw it over to the audience and ask what you think or how you would go about receiving feedback, how you go about consuming content, and what I guess you put in place to make sure that the people that you consume, like everything is is curated in a way that helps you move through life in the most positive, healthy way possible. Matt Jones, thank you for chatting with me as always.
Thanks for having me.
That was Matt Jones. I would love to know your thoughts. I mean, there's so many things in that episode. So please get in touch. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you approach, your social media presence, if you have one, how you deal with feedback or constructive criticism or the booze. I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, rate and subscribe to the podcast. It would mean the world to me. As always, thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much. Have the best day. Stay awesome, and we'll catch you in the next one.